Good Fun Podcast Network.
Welcome to the CHAOSScast, the CHAOSS community podcast where we share use cases and experiences with measuring open source community health, elevating conversations about metrics, analytics, and software from the Community Health Analytics Open Source Software, or CHAOSS for short, project.
Okay, Grimoire Lab is basically a toolkit. It implements an ETL process. So we extract data from many data sources used in software development. So we can get data from Git, GitHub, GitLab, Meetup, and many of other tools used in software development. So once we have this data, we store it in Elasticsearch, that is a NoSQL database, and then we process it. The final data that we process is then shown in the dashboards. So with these dashboards, we are able to drill down on specific aspects of the projects. And for instance, we can know easily the number of commits in a given time frame, or we can get more complex metrics like the time to merge a pull request or the time to first answer an issue. So the main components of Grimoire Lab are Perceval, that is in charge of collecting data from software repositories. And then this data is passed to Elk. Elk is the component that is basically on top of Elasticsearch. It takes care of loading this data from Perceval, process it and store it in Elasticsearch. Then we have a nice component that is SortingNut, that takes care of dealing with all identities information that we can get from repositories. So SortingNut deals with important problem in when mining software repositories, because we can have the same person can have different identities in the tools used by the project. So SortingNut is a relational database that takes this information about the single contributors and aggregate them to profiles. And this aggregated information is then shown in the dashboards. So the dashboards are able to tell you where your contributor is active. So for instance, if it's active on Git or in other parts of the projects. And basically that's all. This is Grimoire Lab.
So just to recap for those following along, so Grimoire Lab is a tool chain that allows us to gather data, enrich that data with context, and then visualize that data. It sounds like a pipeline of different tools, from the collection of it to the correlation of users all the way to the visualization. You know, another question that's kind of out there as we think about Grimoire Labs in relation to these other parts, there's this entity known as Bitergia that we talk about in relation to Grimoire Labs. And then there's a tool called Bitergia Analytics, I think. I'm actually getting confused and I'm pretty close to it. And then, of course, this is called the CHAOSScast because it's part of the CHAOSS project. You know, Georg, can you maybe give us some context on how those all relate to each other?
I get this asked quite a bit, actually. So there are 4 terms here that I want to put into a relationship. One is CHAOSS, the Community Health Analytics Open Source Software project that we are all part of, that this podcast is part of, that Grimoire Lab is part of. So this is the community. Bitergia, the company, is older. Bitergia itself is 8 years old as a company, and it came out of university research before that. And they were developing tools to analyze software development projects, which then turned into the Grimoire Lab tool. And so going back, the relationship between CHAOSS and Grimoire Lab is when we started the CHAOSS project 3 years ago, Bitergia donated the Grimoire Lab code base and tool to the CHAOSS project and thereby co-founded the CHAOSS project.
Venia, you're a co-creator of one of those metrics. You know, when you look at the Grimoire Lab toolchain, like, what do you see? Like, how does that add value to what you're looking to achieve with it?
So I created the social currency metric system, and I was gracious enough in episode 2 of this very podcast for us to actually be able to implement that into Grimoire Labs. Had a really, really important role in that. And I found that there was this technical aspect that was incredibly terrifying as a beginner, as someone who wasn't really a part of the community at that time. But it became a lot softer and a lot easier to get involved and to start actually using the Grimoire Lab infrastructure when I had your kind of go through and say, hey, here's how this works, here's what it does. Just focus on this one thing. Just focus on this implementation. And I find that a lot of analytics systems, even outside of Grimoire Labs, have that same notion. The difference, I think, between Google Analytics and Grimoire Labs is that the package is a lot more full and a lot more versatile. So to see my metric, the social currency metric system, be added to this absolutely wonderful pool of metrics that have real world impacts and are built individually with care, it was an absolutely amazing experience to see. Can I just say, I also want to applaud Bitergia for how much you advertise CHAOSS and Bitergia being completely separate entities. This idea that if Bitergia were to just produce this in-house, you'd have this toolbox, but that toolbox may not fit as many communities. Whereas making the actual toolbox, making CHAOSS a product by and for communities in their own right, allows you to connect hundreds and thousands of different diverse communities and serve them, because that metric toolbox may not necessarily translate to every community and tell a story for those analysts unless those different communities and those analysts were contributing to the project as it stands. For Bitergia to say, hey, our selling point is not we have an analytics system, it's we have a community developing analytics for a broadly diverse group, I just want to applaud that.
Has been our commitment from the beginning of the project. And also to make it clear, is basically, as we said at the beginning and Valerio mentioned, Grimoire Lab is composed by several components, and you can build even your own tooling on top of those components merged with your own technology. And we already have some people that is building their own community relationship managers and things like that based on Perceval or just Sorting Hat to know what people are coming from and things like that.
Are you telling me that communities span multiple channels? Like they're not just all siloed to each individual site we use? That's inconceivable, Manrique.
Now, there are many talks about that you can say about that.
I mean, why would you want to have a forum, a mailing list, GitHub, an issue tracker? I don't know, maybe even Slack or IRC. Maybe you have a Discord, but I don't know. Maybe you need some kind of CDCI. Maybe you also need some kind of code review process. Open source projects are just messy.
That's amazing. Yeah, so I'm glad Sarcasm can get us to like a very valid point that like communities are diverse and interconnected and multi-channel. So yeah, Ray, tell us a little about how you use Grimoire Lab.
Yeah, I mean, I think I started working with Grimoire Lab community. I mean, Manrique, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we started working with each other probably like 2015. So probably like 5 years, and it's like unbelievable how quickly the time flies. And I mean, this even predates my time at GitLab. Back in 2015, I was working at the Linux Foundation, and I talked to a number of different community managers in different open source communities about how they do metrics. And Grimoire Lab was the project that I was pointed to, and that's when I started engaging with Manrique and the rest of the team. I mean, particularly at GitLab, when I started almost 2 years ago, I mean, just like other open source community, we did have a set of metrics on a website called contributors.gitlab.com. I mean, there are a couple of things that were somewhat challenging about our old dashboard. One was it wasn't very visually appealing. It almost looked like a ranking chart that you see on like a college football or basketball if you're a sports fan. You'll see a list of people that have contributed. You can sort through number of contributions and ranks. And so first of all, it wasn't visually appealing. It wasn't graphical at all. So that was one of the challenges. And the other thing that I was really struggling with as a new community member at GitLab, like when I saw a name on the chart or on the list, like I couldn't really tell like which organization that particular contributor belonged to, whether this person was a GitLab employee or was a wider community member. So that was pretty challenging. So a couple of the components that Manrique and Georg talked about, like Kibana for visualization and Sorting Hat for identity management. Those are like two key components that were missing.
It sounds like what your company did was something that I find is difficult for my own clients to do, is to start considering this data that's coming in as a report, so much a report, where you have to dive in, you have to figure out what the context means. You have to piece together your community story. And you switched from that to something that Grimoire Labs and Abridged is capable of offering, which is viewing a dashboard as an actual dashboard, as in like a car. If you're going 75 miles an hour down a highway, you don't want to look at your dashboard and have to be like, okay, so it looks like these 4 charts are telling me I'm speeding. You're looking at it and the odometer reads 80 miles an hour, slow down a little bit. So it's kind of nice to see that dashboarding has become efficient and capable enough for you to be like, all right, so here it is. Let's pump the brakes or let's accelerate a little bit.
From a technology perspective, early in my career, I built systems that managed sales incentives for a sales force. And the algorithms and methods had to change every single year because salespeople figure out real quick how to beat whatever you're scoring them on. And I'm just curious how I think CHAOSS does a great job of focusing on community level metrics and not individual sort of stacking metrics. And I wonder what kinds of choices are made in the design of the Grimoire Lab technology to prohibit, prevent, or at least create some kind of transparency around anything that might be used to measure an individual.
First, the most obvious thing is basically you can decide which panels go into the public dashboard. Basically, the current implementation of Grimoire Lab is separated into public and private instance. So basically, the manager or the administrator of the Grimoire Lab instance is able to, okay, I have all the data, but I want to show only the data that is meaningful for the community.
Thank you for joining us today. To stay up to date on future episodes, please subscribe for free to this podcast on your favorite podcast app. Share this podcast with your friends and colleagues. If you have ideas for future episodes, topics, or, just would like to come on as a guest, please email us at podcast@chaoss.community. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Until next time, your CHAOSS community. Bye, everyone.